Alan Parker was halfway across his backyard, pushing his old red mower in long, clean rows, when he heard the faint clack of the letter slot. He paused, engine idling, brow slick with sweat, and glanced toward the front door. A thin envelope had just slid inside. Alan killed the mower. Still catching his breath, he wiped his hands on his cargo shorts, stepped inside, and picked up the envelope with the casual wariness of someone who'd received too many of them lately. The HOA logo, stylized golden leaves around a townhouse, was stamped in the corner. He didn't need to open it. He already knew, but he did anyway. HOA Violation 47, mowing after the approved window, post 10 hours AM. Disrupts community tranquility. Fine. 752nd offense this month. Alan laughed, but it was bitter and sharp. He glanced at the kitchen clock. 10:12 AM. 12 minutes, he muttered. 12? He could have mowed the whole thing the night before, if it hadn't been for the no machinery after dusk rule. He slapped the letter against the counter, resisting the urge to tear it in half. It was the third fine in just over a month. First, it had been the grass length, 1.8 inches, instead of the allowed 1.5. Then, his clippings hadn't been bagged properly. Now this. The HOA in Willow Ridge wasn't just strict. It was pathological. Some residents thought of the board as neighborhood babysitters. Alan thought of them as bureaucratic vampires. And Karen Delane, the HOA president, was their queen. From across the street, her house loomed behind manicured hedges, the blinds perpetually cracked open, binoculars. Always ready, everyone knew she patrolled the sidewalks at dawn, in white sneakers and a clipboard, peeking over fences, snapping photos. Alan exhaled hard and glanced at his garage. There was another way. Years ago, before he left his job at Dinobotics, he had designed drone systems for industrial landscaping. The project was shelved. Too expensive. Too ambitious. Too weird. But Alan had the files, and he had time. He moved to the garage, opened his laptop, and booted up the blueprints. Project Lawn Phantom. In the corner of the screen, a 3D model shimmered. A sleek four-wheeled bot with quiet turbines, retractable blades, sensor arrays. It looked like a prop from a sci-fi thriller. Alan tapped a key. A new file opened. Modification plan. Stealth protocol. He smiled. No more waking up early. No more rules. The next few days passed in silent fury. Every HOA email, every neighborly glance only fueled his momentum. He converted his garage into a workshop, installing blackout curtains and whisper silent air filtration. He worked late, soldering circuits, machining carbon fiber plates, 3D printing blade housings. Karen walked by twice a day now, slowing down in front of his driveway. Alan waved. She didn't wave back. By Thursday, the chassis was complete. It looked like a cross between a stealth drone and a robotic armadillo. He ran diagnostics. The AI synced perfectly. GPS locked. Schedules coded. Blade height adjustable to millimeters. Test run. Friday, 3:17 AM. Alan leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time all week. Outside, his grass had grown exactly 0.2 inches past the HOA limit. Let them fine him for it. Tomorrow there would be no mowing, no noise, no man. Just shadows and silence, while the HOA slept, and his revolution began. The air inside Alan's garage was hot with the hum of creation. The workbench was a tangle of wires, bolts, and tablet screens, flickering with sensor data. Alan sat hunched over the Mowbot's frame, adjusting the blade motors with a torque wrench as rain drummed softly on the roof. Every inch of the robot had been built for stealth. Its wheels rubberized for silence. Its aluminum frame coated in matte black to avoid light reflection. It didn't look like a lawnmower. It looked like something that belonged to DARPA. A mug of cold coffee sat beside him. He hadn't slept in nearly 40 hours, but his mind was alive, lit with adrenaline and the silent thrill of rebellion. Mowbot 1, his midnight gardener, his HOA-proof ghost, was nearly complete. Tonight was the first trial. He turned to the interface. Screen. The navigation software was live, fed by a 3D map of his entire yard, complete with slope gradients, terrain density, even rabbit tunnels. Infrared sensors checked heat signatures, so it wouldn't accidentally run over critters. The real innovation, though, was the schedule independence mode. The bot could adjust for weather, wind, and even patrol timing. Alan tapped the microphone. Icon. Lawn Phantom, he whispered. Confirm readiness. The bot's LED flashed green. A pleasant synthetic voice replied. Ready to mow, he grinned. You will be. He closed the garage just as a shadow moved outside. A dark figure slowly passed across the sidewalk, holding something in her hand. Alan peeked through the slats in the blinds. Karen. Of course. She walked slowly, deliberately, head tilted toward his garage. Her flashlight clicked on, and she pointed it straight at the security camera above the door. She stared into the lens like she wanted it to blink. Alan exhaled through his nose. He reached for the intercom button and hit record. Reminder. Unauthorized surveillance will be reported. Please return to your property. Karen didn't flinch. She smiled and walked away. That smile. It was the kind that said, I'm already ahead of you. Alan didn't like it. Later that night, under the cover of wind and drizzle, he wheeled Mowbot into the backyard and placed it on the trimmed edge of the lawn. His security lights were disabled. His fence sensors were on full alert. He tapped a button on his tablet. The bot whirred to life, so quietly, it was hard to believe the blades were even spinning. It rolled forward, hugging the yard's edge like a prowling animal. The infrared array blinked on. It made a sweeping turn, then another, working its way inward in tight concentric circles. The precision was perfect. Alan watched from the shadows of his kitchen window, pulse racing. It was working. At exactly 3:48 a.m., Mowbot rolled back into its storage compartment beside the shed. It slid into its housing, auto-locked, and powered down without a sound. By dawn, the lawn was a masterpiece. The cut was flawless, better than he could have done by hand. He took a deep breath, waiting. At 8:06 a.m., another envelope appeared under his door. Alan's chest tensed. He picked it up and ripped it open. HOA compliance note. Lawn is in perfect condition. Thank you for respecting the regulations. Karen Delane Allen burst out laughing. But as he tossed the paper aside, his phone buzzed, a motion alert from his trail cam. Timestamp, 3:33 a.m. Detected. Unknown human figure, female, slippers, flashlight. Alan swiped to play the clip. The grainy footage showed Karen, crouching near his hedges, whispering into a walkie-talkie. She wasn't just suspicious, she was hunting something. Alan watched the grainy footage, frame by frame. Karen's silhouette was unmistakable, wrapped in a long grey cardigan, crouched low, peering through his hedges, like a soldier on recon. Her flashlight flicked back and forth across his lawn, never landing on the Mowbot, which had already completed its cut, and buried itself neatly beneath the mulch beside the shed. She whispered something into her walkie-talkie. Static crackled. A second later, she crept away, disappearing down the sidewalk like a ghost. Alan sat back, jaw tight. She wasn't just suspicious anymore. She was convinced. That meant she was going to escalate. And if Karen escalated, so would the entire HOA. He opened the Mowbot control panel on his tablet. It still showed a clean report. No collisions. Blades clean. Battery at 92%. Audio logs inactive. It had performed perfectly. Flawlessly. But now it needed to do more than mow. It needed to evade surveillance. Alan typed quickly. Protocol update, enable. Thermal cloak, mode enable proximity, reversal. If human within 12 FT, cease movement and hide. He glanced out the window. The sun had risen, and the neighborhood was already alive. Sprinklers ticked. Dogs barked. But across the street, Karen's curtains didn't move. No binoculars. No clipboard. Too quiet. Alan spent the day preparing. He ran Mowbot through dry simulations and coded in a few new tricks. It could now blend into his landscaping like a decorative rock, complete with a false shell. It could receive backup commands through a disguised garden gnome, fitted with a Bluetooth relay. He even embedded a counter-surveillance feature. Mowbot would record anyone within range while remaining dormant. That night, as the neighborhood lights went dark and the streetlights buzzed to life, Alan stood on his porch and listened to the stillness. This time, he didn't sneak Mowbot out himself. He let it go on a timed release. At exactly 3:01 a.m., the side panel on the shed slid open. Mowbot emerged without a sound, wheels gliding silently over damp grass. Its low-profile LED eyes blinked twice, scanning the terrain. Then it began to mow. Alan watched from his upstairs window, heart thumping. He held his breath. As the bot crept within 5 feet of the street, its sensors twitched. Movement, Karen, again. She wore a dark hoodie this time. Crouched lower than before, and this time, she wasn't alone. A man, her husband probably, followed her at a distance, pointing a camera toward the yard. They were hunting for evidence. Mowbot froze. It backed up slowly, drifted behind the trash bin, and slipped beneath the hydrangea bush, perfectly still. The two passed by, whispering. Karen stepped closer to the lawn, scanning it like a CSI investigator. She reached into her jacket and pulled out what looked like a pocket-sized scanner. She waved it near the grass. Alan narrowed his eyes. Was that an RF detector? She was trying to scan for signals. Alan felt a flicker of panic. If she picked up the bot's Bluetooth pulse, the gnome, he yanked his tablet and killed the relay from the garden gnome. Mowbot's signature disappeared from the air. Below, Karen's scanner beeped weakly, then went quiet. She frowned. She moved along. They circled the block and vanished again. The bot waited. Waited. Then at exactly 3:45 a.m., it resumed mowing. By 4:02 a.m., it was back in the shed. By 8 a.m., Alan's lawn looked like a golf course. At 8:11, a new email arrived. Subject: Outstanding compliance. Dear Mr. Parker, your lawn continues to set the standard. Keep up the good work. Karen Delane Allen smirked. But then he noticed something else. Attached to the email was a photograph, a close-up of his hydrangea bush, taken at 3:14 a.m., and in the corner, just barely, was a reflection of metal and LED eyes. They were getting closer. Alan stared at the photo in the email, zooming in until the pixels blurred. There, just beyond the hydrangea leaves, was the edge of the Mowbot's shell, a single gleam of curved metal, a glimmer of its left LED eye. Barely visible, but visible enough to prove it was real. Karen hadn't guessed. She knew. Alan felt. A chill run up his arms. This wasn't about grass anymore. This had become a chess match, and he was one move behind. He flipped to his motion cam archive. At 3:14 a.m., the same time the photo had been taken. The Mowbot had indeed been in hiding. But how did Karen get so close without triggering the proximity alert? Unless he scrubbed back further. Motion footage, thermal data, nothing. His entire northeast fence zone was dead. He stood, heart sinking, and walked to the yard. The northeast corner was hidden by ivy and a row of river stones. He knelt, fingers brushing the base of the sensor post. Cracked. The post had been unscrewed, cleanly, carefully, and the sensor lens pointed downward into the dirt. He cursed under his breath. She didn't just patrol the neighborhood, Karen had infiltrated his system. Inside, he opened his laptop and typed furiously. It was time for a new protocol. Lawn Phantom Update v3.1 Decoy deployment enabled. Silent guard mode active. Intruder response. Record plus ping owner. This was no longer about trimming grass. This was espionage. He worked until the moon rose. Then he deployed his latest upgrade. A decoy bot, identical in shell but inert. No blades, no mobility, just a passive sensor suite and a heat-emitting core. He buried it half visible beneath the mulch pile, precisely where Karen's photo had shown the previous reflection. Bait. Then he programmed Mowbot 1 to circle the yard on an erratic path and wait for movement near the decoy. Just after 2:57 a.m., the alert came in. Motion detected. Zone 4. Visual confirmation. 2 subjects. Approaching northeast quadrant. Alan grinned. He leaned into his screen, heart pounding. Karen and her husband crept through the shadows. She moved straight to the hydrangeas. He followed with the same handheld scanner, this time waving it aggressively around the mulch pile. Karen bent down, fingers brushing the surface. Bingo! As she reached in, Mowbot 1's camera kicked in, silently panning from beneath the rose bush. The bot's AI confirmed human facial ID. Karen Delane, 97% match. Then came the second surprise. Karen reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black cube, a handheld signal jammer. She wasn't trying to scan his robot. She was trying to kill its transmission. The decoy lit up, intentionally, emitting a brief blue blink from its core. Karen yanked her hand back. "Oh my God," her husband whispered. "It's alive?" Karen hissed. "Get the picture. Now." Alan tapped his keyboard. Mowbot 1. Flash disable sequence. The real Mowbot, hidden behind the flower bed, blasted a white strobe across the yard, blinding and disorienting them. Both Karen and her husband ducked, shielding their eyes. The decoy emitted a high-pitched whine. "A fake shutdown protocol!" Karen scrambled to her feet. "We've got what we need!" she yelled. "Let's go!" They bolted down the path, vanishing. Into the night, Alan exhaled, slow and satisfied. Every second had been recorded. But then his screen glitched. A flashing alert popped up. Incoming file received from HOA Security Enforcement Server. He clicked it open. A scanned document appeared. Formal letterhead. HOA Legal Division. Mr. Alan Parker, you are hereby summoned to appear before the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association Council regarding suspected use of unauthorized autonomous machinery in violation of Section 7, subsection B, robotic devices on private property. Possible penalties, fines, lien escalation, or forced removal of equipment. Alan stared at the screen, stunned. Karen wasn't calling code enforcement. She was calling legal warfare, and now the real fight was about to begin. Alan stood outside the community center with a manila folder tucked under his arm and sweat beading at the back of his neck. The HOA council meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp, and he had arrived 15 minutes early, just in time to see Karen Delane already inside, sipping tea from a porcelain cup like she owned the air. Inside the meeting room, rows of metal chairs had been arranged like a courtroom. A long folding table served as the council bench, where 3 board members sat with laptops and tablets. Open. Karen stood at the head, presiding with the smug precision of a judge who already knew the verdict. Residents whispered as Alan walked in. Eyes followed him. A few nods, a few glares. He took a seat near the back, jaw tight, heart pounding. Karen's voice carried over the murmur. We'll begin with the matter of unauthorized robotic equipment operating outside HOA guidelines. Mr. Parker, would you care to join us? Alan walked slowly to the front. The lights were too bright, the chairs too small. His folder suddenly felt heavier than it should. Karen adjusted her glasses. Mr. Parker, are you in possession of an autonomous robotic lawn device? Alan smiled tightly. I'm in possession of a clean-cut lawn and a broken back. That's all. Murmurs. A few chuckles. Karen didn't flinch. We have photographic evidence of what appears to be a machine operating on your property. Operating unsupervised. At night, she clicked a remote. The projector screen behind her lit up with the grainy photos she'd taken. The faint glimmer of the decoy bot under the hydrangea. Alan said nothing. We also obtained footage of unusual light activity and mechanical sounds during restricted hours. Section 7, subsection B, prohibits any unlicensed robotic systems. Due to the potential for property damage and safety risk. She turned, smug. Do you deny that your lawn is being maintained by a machine? Alan opened his folder. Before I answer, he said, may I introduce a counterclaim? The board glanced at each other. Karen's mouth tightened. Proceed, said Councilman Eberly. Alan slid a USB drive across the table. This contains time-stamped footage, thermal imaging logs, and audio records of an unauthorized nighttime intrusion onto my property. Karen blinked. The other council members leaned in. 2 individuals, trespassing, one holding a signal jammer, the other with an unauthorized RF scanner. I believe that constitutes a far greater breach of HOA ethics and local privacy ordinances. He clicked his own remote. The projector screen flickered. Footage rolled. Karen, clearly visible, was crouched behind the mulch pile, reaching for the decoy bot. Her husband stood nearby, visibly speaking into the walkie-talkie. Gasps rippled through the audience. Alan let it play. Then he said, calmly, this bot, if it existed, would be programmed with privacy filters, animal avoidance, and a noise output below 15 decibels. But let's not focus on hypotheticals. Let's talk about this. He paused the video on Karen's face, illuminated by the burst of white light from the flash deterrent. Councilman Eberly cleared his throat. Mrs. Delane, care to explain? Karen stood, smoothing her blouse. This was a test, a neighborhood safety audit. We were checking for security vulnerabilities. Without permission? Asked a second board member. No, Karen snapped. With suspicion. That man is building something. Something unauthorized. Alan leaned forward. I built a device to mow my own lawn. Quietly, efficiently, at times that do not disturb anyone. The only person disturbing the peace is her. The room went silent. Karen's eyes narrowed, but she was no longer confident, just exposed. The council members scribbled notes. One leaned over to whisper to another. Councilman Eberly finally looked up. We'll deliberate and return a decision by week's end. Alan nodded and left the table, but as he stepped outside, his phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: Immediate HOA amendment proposal. Robotic surveillance ban. Karen had just moved the war to legislation. Alan sat on his porch that night, hands steepled, the porch light casting long shadows across his perfectly manicured lawn. The HOA council hadn't ruled yet, but Karen's maneuver had come fast. An emergency amendment proposal aimed at banning all robotic surveillance and autonomous machinery. It was a surgical strike. If it passed, Mobot would be illegal by default, whether or not they could prove it existed. Alan didn't need to outsmart Karen anymore. He needed to outnumber her. He opened his neighborhood app and scrolled past the usual rants about recycling bins and barking dogs until he found what he needed. A community thread titled HOA Rules Getting Out of Hand. He replied with a simple message: tired of being micromanaged for mowing schedules. I have a story. Come by my place at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Let's talk. The next evening, 7 people showed up. By Friday, there were 20. By Saturday night, Alan's backyard was packed with folding chairs, lawn lights, and cups of lemonade. He stood in front of them. Neighbors of all ages, from teenagers tired of quiet hours to retirees, fed up with being fined for the color of their garden gnomes. I'm not here to whine about grass, he said. I'm here because a machine I designed to help me, on my own property, has been labeled a threat, not because it's dangerous, but because it's independent. Murmurs of agreement. She trespassed on your lawn, someone shouted. She tried to jam your signal. Alan nodded. And now she's trying to rewrite the rules, so no one can do anything she doesn't personally approve of. That's not oversight, that's control. Then he unveiled it. Mobot. For the first time publicly, sleek, matte black, the size of a suitcase, low-profile treads, twin camera pods, silent blades retracted neatly inside, a marvel of smart engineering, and Alan's private rebellion made manifest. He activated it. It rolled forward smoothly, trimming a perfect path through the grass without a sound. Gasps, whispers, and then applause. But Alan wasn't done. I've designed a dozen more variations, he said. Mobot isn't just for me. It can serve the whole community. Quiet, clean, eco-friendly. I'm offering to install versions for anyone who wants one. Free of charge. Just chip in for parts. They cheered. Karen might have control of the council, but Alan had the people. He ended the night with clipboards and sign-up sheets. By morning, over 30 neighbors had pledged support for Alan's bot, and more importantly, against Karen's proposal. But Karen wasn't done yet. That Monday, she launched her counterattack, a sleek PDF newsletter titled Preserving Our Traditional Neighborhood Values, complete with bullet points about dangerous automation, surveillance threats, and a resident with an unregistered machine of unknown capabilities. The final section read, if this ordinance is not passed, we open the gates to a future where human decisions are overridden by cold, mechanical enforcement. Is that the Willow Ridge we want? Alan sent his own reply, not a newsletter, a video. It featured footage of Mobot gently mowing in the background, while neighbors spoke directly to the camera. Best sleep I've had in months, said Mrs. Haynes, who had PTSD from noisy gas mowers. I can finally tend to my roses without dodging grass clippings, said Ms. Rosario. My husband's allergies are better, said Mr. Patel. No more airborne grass dust at 6 a.m. Alan ended the video with a statement to the HOA board. This machine doesn't violate community peace. It preserves it. The video went viral within the neighborhood app, but what arrived the next morning caught him off guard. A small white envelope taped to his door. Inside was a single card. You've made your move. I'm making mine. See you at the final vote. No signature. But he didn't need one. Karen was coming for blood. The Willow Ridge Community Center had never seen this many people. The HOA meeting was standing room only. Neighbors packed the hall, some holding signs. Let Mobot mow, and Karen is not the law. Others whispered anxiously, scanning the council table where Karen sat front and center. Flanked by board members who looked like they'd aged a year in a week, Alan stood at the back with his arms crossed, Mobot resting beside him like a loyal dog. Councilman Eberly raised his gavel. Tonight we will vote on Amendment 14B, the ban on autonomous lawn devices and surveillance equipment. Arguments for and against will be heard. Karen stood immediately, clutching her printed manifesto like a weapon. Neighbors, she began. This isn't about lawns. This is about boundaries, safety, privacy. If we let machines operate without supervision, what's next? Drones? Cameras? AI writing our newsletters? Nervous laughter trickled through the room. We have a right to feel secure in our homes, not monitored, not overridden. Mr. Parker's device is a Trojan horse. And if we don't stop it now, our community becomes a playground for reckless tech. She sat, breathing hard. Councilman Eberly nodded. Thank you. Mr. Parker, your rebuttal. Alan walked forward, calm but intense. Mobot rolled behind him on silent treads, stopping precisely at his heel. Neighbors, he began. What you're seeing tonight isn't just a robot. It's a mirror. A mirror for what our HOA has become. He looked directly at Karen. A place where innovation is treated as rebellion. Where helping yourself is viewed as threatening control. He turned back to the crowd. I built Mobot because I was tired of fines, threats, and clipboard drive-bys. It doesn't spy. It doesn't report. It mows my lawn. Quietly, efficiently. Without polluting your air or interrupting your dinners. He paused, letting the tension build. Karen says, this is a Trojan horse, but I say it's a blueprint for self-reliance, for peace, for choice. Then he pulled out a folder and slapped it onto the podium. This contains signed petitions from over 60 residents, nearly half the community. We support Mobot. We support progress. We support ourselves. The room erupted into applause. Someone shouted, Let him mow! Karen leapt up, shouting over the noise. This is a circus! He's manipulating you all! Mrs. Delane, Councilman Eberly snapped. You've had your turn. She sat down, face red and fists clenched. Eberly sighed. We will now hold the vote. Board members only. One by one, the council cast their votes. Alan counted silently. Councilwoman Kim, against the ban. Councilman Ruiz, against. Councilman Eberly. The room held its breath. He looked around slowly, then at Karen, then at Mobot. Against, gasps, then silence. Karen stood slowly, eyes wide. You can't be serious. You're letting this happen. Eberly turned to her. What I'm not letting happen is personal vendettas turning into policy. He banged the gavel. The motion to ban autonomous lawn devices has failed. Mobot may continue operating under the current regulations. Alan closed his eyes for a second. It was over, or so he thought, because as the room cheered and people rushed to shake his hand, Karen leaned toward him as he passed. This isn't over, Parker, she whispered. Enjoy your victory lap. Because, soon, someone else will be watching. Then she turned and walked out, her heels striking the floor like a warning bell. Alan stood frozen. What did she mean? Someone else. But before he could follow her, Mobot emitted a faint chirp. Its sensors had just picked up a foreign signal. Another bot, and it wasn't his. Alan stood on his porch in the deep hush of midnight. eyes fixed on Mobot's status display. The screen flashed red. Alert. Foreign device detected, signal type. Active. Unauthorized. Directional bearing. 182 degree. South perimeter. Someone or something was in his backyard. He stepped quietly down the porch steps and crept to the back fence, Mobot gliding behind him like a shadow. The moon cast a pale silver over the lawn, and there, just beside the rhododendrons, something moved. Small, angular, sleek. A bot. Alan's breath caught. This wasn't his tech. It had chrome plating, sharper treads, and tiny antennae blinking faint red. A surveillance drone on wheels. It scanned the area with a retractable sensor array, paused at his garden bed, then angled its lens directly at his house. Mobot issued a soft warning tone, preparing to block the intruder. Alan whispered, "Stand down. Let it feed." He pulled out his phone and quietly tapped into Mobot's internal uplink. As the foreign device moved deeper into his yard, Alan activated Protocol Echo, a passive interception mode designed for digital eavesdropping. Within seconds, data flooded in. The source IP was masked, but not well enough. The signal had bounced from a relay tower installed 2 blocks down on Karen Delane's roof. Alan nearly laughed. She'd lost the vote, so now she was violating the very privacy rules she preached, using her own surveillance bot to track Mobot's behavior and look for reasons to reopen the case, and it had just fed her exactly what he wanted. He waited. 2 days later, Karen made her move. An emergency bulletin was posted to the HOA forum. New evidence of bot activity beyond property line. Mr. Parker's device has now been confirmed, breaching adjacent lots without consent. Formal complaint and footage to follow. Emergency disciplinary session, convening Friday evening. Alan smiled. He let the clock tick. When Friday came, the room was smaller than last time. Just Karen, the board, and a few die-hard HOA loyalists. Alan walked in, wearing a clean shirt, carrying a sleek black case. Karen, visibly pleased with herself, stood before the board and loaded a video file. The footage showed Mobot edging suspiciously close to the Thompsons' yard. But something was off. The angle, the shadows, the lens distortion. Alan raised a hand. "Counsel, before we proceed, may I ask a simple question?" Councilman Eberly sighed. "Go ahead. Where was this footage taken from?" Karen scoffed. "A neutral third-party observer recorded it from a public sidewalk." Alan placed the black case on the table and opened it. Inside sat a flash drive, 3 screenshots, and a printed schematic. "That's odd," he said, "because this footage didn't come from the sidewalk. It came from this." He held up one of the photos. Karen's bot, captured by Mobot's sensors in high resolution, along with its location ping, timestamps, and intercepted signal logs, all pointing back to her roof antenna. Karen froze. Alan continued. "So, either the footage was fabricated, or the evidence was obtained through illegal surveillance. On private property, the room went dead quiet." Councilwoman Kim stared at Karen. "Is this true?" Karen's jaw worked furiously, but no words came out. Councilman Ruiz stood. "That's a federal violation, Mrs. Delane, and grounds for immediate removal from the HOA board." Karen's face paled. Alan turned to her, calm and precise. "You wanted a war, Karen, but I just wanted to mow my lawn." And then he added, "By the way, I've already mailed a copy of this evidence to the HOA insurance provider. You know, for liability reasons." She stormed out, trembling with rage, her empire collapsing behind her. That night, Alan returned, home to quiet streets and a dozen messages from grateful neighbors. He opened his garage and patted Mobot. "And good job, buddy. Let's give the grass a rest tomorrow." But just before heading inside, he noticed something at the edge of his fence. A small cardboard box. Inside it, a note. "Nice bot. Want to collaborate? I've been working on an autonomous NASA weed puller. Yours in rebellion. Lot 12. Alan grinned. The future was automated. And this time, it belonged to the homeowners.